Welcome back to Sports Legends of the Carolinas, and thank you for subscribing. I'm your host, Scott Fowler, and on this podcast, we speak with some of my favorite sports icons from the region I've covered for almost 30 years.
Yeah, I still, Scott, when I go to the games, and I went to a concert the other night, I look up and see my name up there. I still pinch myself a little bit. It's the greatest recognition that I've ever received in my life. I mean, it validated my work here, really, in my whole career.
For this episode of Sports Legends of the Carolinas, I'm thrilled to have tight end Wesley Walls. Walls was a star for the Panthers from 1996 to 2002.
I mean, my mom would say, this thing's not going to last forever. Well, it doesn't. It really doesn't last forever. And she gave me the example that I could live by the rest of my whole life.
Thanks again for supporting this work. Here's the rest of our conversation. To get back to the Panthers, Wesley, then you came here in '96 and were a star. A tight end. It would have been hard for people to believe probably that you hadn't played it till senior year in college, the way you were so natural at it here. So tell me a little bit more about your career here, and then also tell me about how it ended, because it was abrupt, and I know it was on a sort of an anniversary or a milestone for you.
Yeah, and let me just I want to give Coach Capers a lot of credit, because he told me on my trip here, he said, Wesley, you're going to love it here. You're going to love this community. You're going to fit in perfect, and you're going to love our offense. We got a new quarterback, and you're going to fit in our offensive system perfectly. And he was right. I mean, we had a little K4 package where play action and stuff, and it just we used to, a little Y stick nod down on the end zone. It just very productive for the tight end for me, and it was a perfect situation. And I had great success because of his system. And then because of some of the things that happened in Coach Capers, and he got fired, and they hired George Seifert. And I joked a little bit. I said, I might as well put a for sale sign up I had him 5 years in San Fran. Heck, he wouldn't even hardly let me play.
Right. I think you caught 11 passes in 5 years, if I remember. Yeah, total. Yeah.
So I was just finishing my first contract, 3 years, and here comes Seifert. But no, I give Coach Seifert some credit too. He came in 99, and that was one of my best offensive years. Steve Berline, Kerry Collins had left by then. Steve came in, and we had a great offense. Pat Jeffers caught 12 touchdowns. I caught 12. Willie Green, and we had it in Berline. We just had we were really good. We didn't make it to the playoffs, so and then 2000 came along, and I blew my knee out. I was having this good season and blew my knee out in Atlanta. Mm. And I remember on the plane ride back, Coach Seifert came over to me and said, "You were a hell of a football player." Oh, and I'm like, I don't know what "were" means. What's that mean?
Yeah,
yeah. I knew it had to be bad news.
The past tense, yeah.
So I came back and went through the whole next season, and I think that was a year that we went 1-15.
Right.
So we had 99 and 2000. I blow my knee out in 2001. I come back, and we went 1-15, and I blew my knee out again in the 14th game, and so Coach Fox comes in, and I come back, and I felt like I was going to be utilized, but Coach Fox had no intention of using the tight end other than block.
Right. Right. It was a sixth offensive lineman for him, wasn't it? More or less.
That's right. And honestly, after training camp, I said, I think I'm going to catch some balls this year. I was kind of excited, but just didn't work out. Plus that, I was coming back on my second ACL, and I just wasn't the same. And I knew my time was coming. And I had a clause in my contract. March 1, I had a big bonus due. And it was about February the 25th, and I hadn't gotten a call from anybody. I've been just trying to stay under the radar, and maybe they'd forget about it. And sure enough, here's a call, Coach Fox. And he says, "Wesley, can you come down and see me today?" I said, "Sure, Coach." So I go down. I know. He walks in. He said, "Man, you had a great career here. We want you to retire a Panther. It's just time for you to retire. What do you think?" I said, "Well, Coach, I've been down to see Jim Andrews down at Alabama. And he says he can fix my knee. I couldn't even practice my last year with the Panthers, man. I was riding a bike during the week and practicing on Saturday and trying to play. And he said, Wesley, it's time. It's time for you to retire. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to give you 24 hours and let's meet back here tomorrow at the same time. So I went home, talked to Christy, talked to my agent, and I just felt like I wanted to play. I still wanted to play another year. So I came back and told him that, and we hugged. And he said, you know what I got to do? I said, yes, sir. I said, Coach, I just appreciate the opportunity. And so he released me on February the 26th. Well, all my football cards have my birthday is February 26th. And so the paper and the media and everybody said Coach Fox releases Walls on his birthday.
Yeah.
And that hurt him. He called me. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about that. And Marty Herney, it's the same thing. Didn't know it was your birthday. And the truth of it is my birthday is March 26th.
What in the world? I missed it the whole time? Oh, my gosh.
And so
we got to change your Wikipedia too, probably.
You got to get the Wikipedia. So I let Foxy and Marty think they'd cut me on my birthday for a long time. I finally told them.
When did you own up to it? Oh, you mean you took the sympathy? You didn't say, it's not my birthday anyway. Yeah.
I told them.
Because you were hurt.
Yeah, I was hurt a little bit.
You were PO'd, yeah.
But I will give Foxy a lot of credit, and Mr. Richardson too. When I signed with Green Bay that year, it was a late sign. I was in August, and honestly, I wasn't going to play, Scott. I mean, I was content, but I was working out, and I get a call. I got a little farm down in Chester. I had one then, and I'm on a tractor. I call it tractor time. I'm bush hogging a little field, and I get a call from Brett Favre. Man, what are you doing? I said, I'm on a tractor, bush hogging. He loves it. Oh, I love that. And he says, look, we're looking for a tight end up here. Do you have any gas left in the tank? I said, yeah, I got gas left in the tank, man. He said, are you in shape? I said, of course I'm in shape. He said, are you going to get a call when we hang up, and they're going to probably bring you up here tomorrow and work out. So it's like I was talking to the general manager / Brett Favre over there. He arranged it all. Sure enough, I get a call. Yeah. I'm on a plane right up there, and I signed, and the first phone call I get was from John Fox and Jerry Richardson. Congratulate me. Man, that's a perfect fit, Wesley. You're going to do great up there. And I think we even played them in a preseason game that year up there. So it was a lot of hugs and stuff. So I really appreciated Foxy. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to fit in his program. And he had the right guy with Chris Mangum to replace me. Chris, what a great football player. I got so much respect for him. I invited him to my Hall of Honor celebration as a teammate because he always supported me. A lot of times there's a friction, not only because we both went to Ole Miss, but we were playing the same position.
Yeah.
And it was never anything like that. That guy was there to talk me off the ledge a couple of times. And and if I have one regret about my time with the Panthers, is how it ended. I mean, just how frustrated when you're injured and you're not playing and you're reading about how much money you're making, how it doesn't fit in the salary cap, how you don't fit in the team. You act up. Kind of, I mentioned I'd acted up before sometime. You just kind of turn into somebody you really aren't. And you become ungrateful. And that's the antithesis of me. I am so grateful for the opportunities that I had here, that I had back in high school, all the people that God put in my life at just the right time, that when I thought I was going to quit, when I thought it was over, there was another opportunity presented to me by people he put in my life. And to have it end like that, being ungrateful, that's my regret. That's my regret. And
just that you didn't accept the end gracefully.
Sure didn't. Yeah. I just wasn't graceful. I was not a good guy in the locker room, off the field. I just changed. I mean, it changed me for a year or so, and then I went up and played in Green Bay, and I knew that was over. And I have to admit, that season was the only time in the last, a long time that I had kind of just smelled the roses. I kind of looked around and took in all the scenery of playing in Green Bay.
Yeah, Lambeau Field.
The tradition and history. They had a little plaque up there that had, through this tunnel, 13 world champions have passed.
Whoa.
Are you going to be the next?
Oh, that's good.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. So I became grateful again when I went to Green Bay. I became humbled. It took me all the way back. And humility is such a is such a character trait that is not mentioned enough, because when you're humbled, when life has a way of humbling you, when you, and everybody gets humbled, when you get humbled, you see things a lot more clear, and you appreciate things a lot more than you did before. And I think that Green Bay year made me appreciate my career so much more, and my time here with the Carolina Panthers. And we came back, and the Panthers were in the Super Bowl. I remember Berline and I, we were like jealous, a little bit jealous.
Sure, yeah, because it was the very next year. Yeah,
very next year. So we went over to my house and had our own little Super Bowl party, commiserated together.
Rooting for or against the Panthers?
Rooting for them, 100%.
Okay, all right.
100%.
Yeah, good.
And, was devastated because they lost just like everybody else. But it was it just and it solidified that we were going to stay here in Charlotte. I mean, I just had built my family, raised here, relationships, friends, and church people that I got a life. I've got a great life here, and there's no sense leaving that behind just because it ended poorly.
Sure, yeah. Yeah.
So,
and your life here includes a very successful. You're a very successful businessman. Tell people what you do now.
Yeah, I actually, I'm working with a construction company, Shellco. I've been around here a long time, real reputable construction company, and I'm still doing some real estate development. I stay busy with that, and not as much as I had in the past. And I play a lot of golf.
Nice. What's your handicap?
My handicap, it swings between 5 and 9. It's at 9 right now. I got a little elbow problem. I've got a lot of problems, hips and knees and backs. But
I was going to ask you about your health. I always ask former NFL players about their health. So what's yours like these days?
Yeah, I still weigh about the same. My wife is such my diet has changed. Her diet has changed, and that's helped me keep weight off. I hadn't been able to lose any, and I still work out. I can't run anymore, can't jump. So I do elliptical, and I do a little treadmill and stuff like that, just low impact. But, overall, I get blood work done, physical. The NFL's got all these physicals that you can take, and neurologically, internal, orthopedically. I'm doing okay. I'm going to end up having two fake hips, probably a knee replacement, and I got elbow arthritis and stuff like that back. But overall, for somebody that played 15 years, 56 years old, I'm in good shape, and I'm thankful for that.
You look good. Now, you told me one time, I think you thought you had 7 concussions that people counted, but then probably a lot more bell ringers, as they used to call them back then. Is that? Am I remembering that right? Is that right?
Good memory. Yeah. And we're on the health subject. The biggest concern I have is my, health, my brain health.
Brain, sure, mental, yes,
mental health, and 7 concussions, and I feel fine. I know there's probably something's going on up there. I mean, I can't deny it, or I can't say that hey, you play 15 years and have 7 concussions, that some kind of trauma you didn't have some kind of trauma. But overall, I'm doing great. And I will say that the league has done a good job of giving us access to testing and therapies that if you have a problem, they're going to reach in and help. They're a lot better than they used to be.
Good.
They've done a good job. So I've taken advantage of any resources like that I can. And I think that's going to pay off. I mean, I think brain health is something on everyone's mind. The game now, I tell people, would you let your kid, and my kid did play, would you let your grandchildren, I've got 3 boys that are grandchildren, and yes, I'd let them play, because the game is much more safer now than it ever has been. Really? And they're really doing a good job with that.
You were a game changer near the end zone, and that's where I think people remember you. You scored so many times. And 12, I think you mentioned earlier, but that was a record, I believe, or tied one, or was a record for NFL. What made you so good, in the end zone?
Well, my heart started pounding a little bit. We got to the 20, and honestly, most of the regular game playing out in between the 20s, there's a little play action here and there. But when we got down there, I knew the quarterbacks believed in me, and they could throw me open, is what Berline used to say. I wouldn't go outrun anybody. I mean, everybody says I'm slow or whatnot. Something when you get a football running in your arm, it slows me down. But when I'm running a route, I can run. I can get open. And Berline could throw me open just like all the other guys. But really, everything gets condensed. So any little mistake, any little advantage you have over a defensive back or a linebacker, I felt like it was in my favor. And I had a better chance down there than I did out in the field of making a play, and I felt that was my role. I kind of just fell into it. The coaches believed in me to call the play, and the quarterbacks believed in me to make the play. And that accountability, that's one thing I miss about football more than anything, is being held accountable. And when folks believe in you, you see it. Everything happens in life, in football, in 3 hours. And you get these feelings like, I got upset with Coach Fox one time up in Green Bay. I'll never forget. He ran a draw play down on the 8 or 9 yard line. And I wanted to run that Y stick knot. And he ran that draw play, and I said he didn't have any confidence in me. And
you told him that,
I told somebody that, and then I got called up to the principal's office. And Coach Fox will tell you this day that he respects that, but at the same time, you can't go behind a coach's back and say stuff. That's some of the stuff that I did. I was mentioning earlier, but you get that feeling, and when you get a feeling that they believe in you and they call that play, and the quarterback believes in you, there's nothing better. And then you go and make the play. I got a picture in my I Love Me room. It's a picture of me.
My I Love Me room. That's a good name for it. All right. Instead of an ego wall, you got an I Love Me room. Okay. Yeah.
And it's got me and Steve Berline. We got our arms around each other, and we're looking at each other. And I got one of the carriers, the same thing, same play, really. And he said, "Can you believe they can't stop that play?"
That's great.
We could call it and just run it, but.
What was that play exactly? You keep mentioning it, but what did you do on this particular play they couldn't stop?
Is Y stick nod, and you get down on about the 8 yards, perfect room where you about a 5 yard route, and then you act like you're doing a 5 yard out, and then you turn it up and split the seam, or if it's a middle safety, you kind of keep it wide. And there's only a small window, and they still run it to this day. It's just there's different variations of it, and it's not always the same. Sometimes you'd go out a couple steps. Sometimes you just give them a head fake. You just have to kind of read the coverage a little bit and how they're playing you. So if they overplay, you can go underneath them. And the coaches believed in me. The quarterbacks, they knew what I was going to do before I even knew it, and I knew what they were going. I knew they were looking at me, and so it just worked. And I remember Eugene Robinson one time with the Falcons. He called it out. What's the Y stick nod? Y stick nod. And I kind of, you kind of like, golly, he knows it's coming. Touchdown.
Really? It worked anyway. That's great. That's great. You told me I was reading. My memory is really not that very good, but it is. My archive system's very good. So I just read a bunch of stuff that you've told me over the years. But one of them was a funny story about, did you do an autograph session in Mississippi with Dale Earnhardt Sr. one time?
Yeah. I just signed with the Panthers, and I had a car deal. I mean, a car dealer was letting me borrow a car to do some autograph sessions for them, and it's down in Jackson, Mississippi. And so he called me up and said, "Look, we got a race car driver coming, and we want you here with us too this time." So I was in Mississippi. I drove down to Jackson from Oxford, and it's on the outside the interstate, and you have to go past the dealership to come back. And I drove right past the dealership. I looked there, there's a line. Thousands of people in line over there. And I'm like, geez, man, I hadn't been back in a while. I didn't know anybody missed me this much, So I come around and park, and I'm waving at all the people in the line over. How y'all doing? And the guy who's putting the program on, he says, I start walking toward the dealership in here. He says, no. That's Dale Earnhardt's. He's going to sign here, and you're going to sign over here at the Dodge store. And I looked over there, and I had 7 of my cousins over there. And they said, have you ever met Dale Earnhardt? And I said, well, as soon as I sign these 8 people's autograph, I want you to take me over there so I can meet him. And they took me over there, and I met Dale Earnhardt and shook his hand and became a NASCAR fan right then. He was an awesome guy. Got to know him and his son Dale Jr. and all those NASCAR guys. It was a natural fit for me with this accent, being from Mississippi. So I really enjoyed the years here with NASCAR.
Right, and he was a big hunter and fisherman, and which I think you were into as well, right?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved it, and we talked about that. And a lot of those guys, NASCAR, like to hunt and fish. it was a natural fit.
You you mentioned Tupelo earlier. I meant to ask you at that time, but Tupelo was Elvis's home, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
And so did you tell me about sort of the Elvis, weren't there some sort of Elvis connections in your family or a daycare center or something?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
My mother grew up, she's the same age as Elvis, grew up. And so she went to the fairgrounds to watch him play. And as a child, when my mom and dad both worked, they drop us off at Elvis Presley Daycare. It was out of her way, but she was going to make sure I went to Elvis Presley Daycare.
Really?
It was out by the lake in
Was
his little house.
there any people was there any Elvis themes in there? Teachers wearing white jumpsuits or anything?
It was more like a summer camp maybe, and it was just at his old home site. And I'm telling you, it's like 500 square feet.
Huh.
And
it was really at his old home site?
His old home site there in Tupelo, Mississippi.
That's
they got
bizarre.
a park.
Okay.
They built a little lake. So we'd go there and during the day and do all kind of activities. I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old. And I do. The day he died, I was in the car with my mom, and it came on the radio that Elvis Presley had died. She had to pulled over and just cried her eyes out. And I just couldn't. I didn't know. I mean, how much he meant to her. And she told me she almost named you Elvis. I said, "Well, thank you, Mom, for not doing that."
Yeah. That would have been a lot to live up to.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, he was. I guess there he would have been as big a star as you could have possibly had. I suppose.
He was the man. Your
favorite touchdown that you ever scored at any level of football would be?
Whoa, man! All the Panther touchdowns are great, and there were some really good ones. There was one from Kerry Collins against the 49ers out there when we clinched the division in '96. But I have to admit, the one from Brett Favre after his dad died the day before the game. We had a Monday night game. Sunday, Brett's dad had a heart attack driving and died. And Brett's a close friend. Talked to him. We had a team meeting. It's the same routine. Everybody goes in a team meeting for the game that night, and Brett was not in there. And he comes in the team meeting room, and we didn't know if he was going to play or not. And he says, "Guys, let me tell you about my dad. He was my best friend. He was my worst critic. He coached me all the way through high school, and he comes to almost every game. And there's no doubt I know exactly what he wants me to do tomorrow night. He wants me to play, and I'm going to play my best game." Fast forward, we get into the game. First of all, Brett, he went in at the only thing that was in his locker was a helmet. And I was thinking, did he change his mind? And we always run out with the quarterbacks, and it was getting close to time, and he wasn't there, and we were all kind of whispering and looking for him. And down at the Raiders Coliseum in Oakland, there was a tunnel there. You could see out in the tunnel, and all of a sudden the black SUV comes out, and it's Brett Favre. He's fully dressed.
Fully dressed.
Got his pants, his shoulder pads on. He hugs Deanna, comes in and grabs his helmet, and he goes, "Let's go, boys." And he walks on that damn field. And I was so fired up. We get in the first series, and we were about the 30-yard line going in. He's already made 2 third down throws. Incredible. He's on fire. And one thing about Brett, he's contagious competitiveness. When he's on a roll, you better be on a roll because it's going, it's coming, it's coming. And he had that feeling. He was focused, and we get down and we a bootleg, a roll out to the left. I'm clearing out the safety, and I basically had the safety. I was covered like a glove, so I was just kind of looking back. Bubba Franks was coming underneath, and then Brett could run it, and everybody was open but me. And I looked back and I said, "I think he's throwing the ball to me," and then I'm like, he is throwing the ball to me. So I sped up, and I said, "I think I can get it." And it dropped. It dropped right over the guy's hand. Barely over his finger. I can still see it in my mind. And it just went right in my fingers, and I caught it, and I held on to it, and I got up, and I said, "I caught that damn thing." and I hadn't scored a touchdown. I hadn't done anything the whole year, and that was my first touchdown. And I said, "I'm going to give this to Brett." And I turned around, and that guy jumped in my arms. And on the night after his dad died, he said to me, "I finally got you one." He remembered, and that's why he threw it. And I was like,
so that was his very first touchdown pass out on that. I know he threw like 4 or 5 in that game, didn't he? Go crazy, yeah.
He did. That was the very first one.
That was the first one. Wow.
And
I did not know that.
I grabbed that ball and I handed it to him. He said, "You keep it." and I went on the sideline, and Jeff Jagodzinski was my tight end coach. He said, "How you feel?" I said, "I don't know if I want to play anymore." I said, "It can't get any better than that." And he went on to have statistically he went on to have his best night he ever had that night. It was awesome. But there were a lot in the Panthers. But that was kind of like that was the last touchdown I caught. That put the stamp on my career.
And Favre throws, and that is caught by Wesley Walls for a touchdown.
Wow, so you ended with Favre. Who was your very first touchdown pass from them?
Steve Young.
Whoa.
Yeah, Steve Young. Joe, I never got one from
impressive.
Joe. Joe was hurt.
Never
that
got
game.
one from Joe because you didn't play with him just at Menlo.
Yeah, I got a lot. Yeah.
Didn't you, speaking of touchdowns, didn't one time you try to spike a touchdown when you scored for the Panthers towards Seifert? You wanted to bounce the ball that way or something? Tell me that one. What?
Yeah, that was out in Candlestick, and caught one in the corner over there off Tim McDonald. I love Tim. Tim and the Merton Hanks, man, we went at it all the time. And it was on their sideline, and that's kind of one of those moments you kind of, I just felt like Seifert didn't believe in me, and that put the game out of reach. We were going to win the game. And I tried to roll it. I'm a good spiker. I can get it to go straight up, and I used to drop down and shoot it, So this one, I was going to make it roll over to the sideline. It did a good job, too, and I looked at him. I looked and pointed at him. And we joke about that, but Coach Seifert, those kind of things motivate you. My whole career is based on perseverance. It could have been over in high school. You just kept fighting, and it could have been over in the 49ers, and then finally I get here with the Panthers where it all came together.
Someone once said, home is where your feet may leave, but not your heart. When I landed in Charlotte that day on that free agency trip, I knew in my heart. You ever get that feeling? I'm in the right place, at the right time. I finally found a home for my football career, a home for my family. It was an honor to put on the pads with you, walk on the field with you. I'm home when I'm with you. I'm home as a Carolina Panther.
Wesley, I would imagine one of the biggest honors of your career happened a few years ago when you were named as a 4-person Hall of Honor class for the Panthers. First time they had put anybody in 20-something years since Sam Mills had been the first and the only playing member. Tell me about how you found out, how important that was to you symbolically.
Yeah, I still, Scott, when I go to the games, and I went to a concert the other night, I look up and see my name up there. I still pinch myself a little bit. It's the greatest recognition that I've ever received in my life. I mean, it validated my work here, really, in my whole career. And at the same time, one of the most special moments about it is when Mr. Tepper called me to tell me that I'd been selected to the Hall of Honor. My mom had been diagnosed with colon cancer, and she was in the hospital, and they were trying to operate to see if they could save her. And so she just finished her surgery, and we just got the news that it was inoperable. It was stage 4 and it's terminal. And it was very emotional. And then I get this unknown number call, and David Monroe, someone had called me, said, "Wesley, if you get a call from an unknown number, and that was weeks ago." And I just answered it for whatever reason. It was Mr. Tepper. And he asked me what I was doing. I told him, I'm in the hospital. I said, "Are you okay?" I said, "It's my mom." And he says, "Well, I've got some good news to maybe cheer you up. And you've been selected to the Hall of Honor." And I mean, you see the video. I think they had it on video or something. I don't know how they got it on video. I mean, he FaceTimed me. That's it.
FaceTime.
And, he FaceTimed me, and I looked like I'd been crying all day. I can tell you that. But it was a very emotional moment. I didn't know how to take it. But and I asked him. I said, "Can I tell my mom?" And he said, "You can tell your mom." So I walk in there after that phone call, and I told her, and she said, "What's that mean?" I said, "Well, my name gets to go up in the stadium next to Sam Mills." And she looked at me and said, "You deserve it." And so some of the worst news, some of the best news, and I get to share it with probably the most influential person in my life that day, and probably the worst day of her life. It was very, it was I don't know, it was special. All of it was. I know it's terrible, but it was special in some way too.
That's a wonderful and that's a real life story too, isn't it? I mean, that's unfortunately the way life sometimes works. Now, I guess she would have been too ill to travel when you had the actual ceremony, probably.
Yeah, she couldn't make it. She could not travel, and it's a terrible. Cancer is a terrible thing, and it's I don't know. It's hard to even talk about it, but watching her battle, there's no doubt. I look, and I never went through another kind of battle like that, but she's always been a great example for me. She always told me, you better make good grades, because this football's not going to last. And I was valedictorian in my high school class, and I always
how big was your class?
It was 85, and I was kin to all of them too. So I was just the smartest cousin. But
some of them came to the Earnhardt signing later, right? Yeah.
The one thing I always did, even in college, I said, if this football doesn't work out, and I major in engineering. If this football don't work out, when I was playing football, I did stuff in the off season, and I would tell that to young people too. I mean, my mom would say, this thing's not going to last forever. Well, it doesn't. It really doesn't last forever. And my mom gave me the example that I could live by the rest of my whole life.
You've mentioned people who have influenced you over your entire life, or decades really now. And tell me some people that have.
Yeah, I really need to give my wife a lot of credit. Christy Washington Walls, Yazoo City, Mississippi. I met her at a wedding before her freshman year at Ole Miss. I was going into my junior year, and I saw her at the reception, and I asked for her phone number, and we went out on a date the next few days, and that was 1987. So here it is, 35 years later, we're still together. And she's been there with me along the way the whole time. I remember there's a good story here on the night we got engaged in college in her freshman year.
Her freshman year, dang, Wesley, you were moving fast.
I knew. Hey, when I knew that I was in love. Man,
yeah, you didn't want any of those frat boys at Ole Miss probably seeing her, right? Yeah.
Smart guy. I was going to take her off the market, and I proposed, and there was a little party we were at a day later or whatnot, and the theme of that party was Destination Unknown. And if I can think about our journey together, that's pretty much what sums it up.
That's good. Not sure what's going to happen. Destination Unknown. Who knew you would end up in Charlotte all these years later, 15 years? So you had to, probably it was some long distance stuff going on there too, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you would have had to go to play.
Yeah, especially when I was in San Francisco and she was going back and forth. And I mean, we got a great story. That's another whole podcast. I can tell you that. She's one heck of a lady. It's funny though, Scott. She has never aged, and somehow I just keep getting older. I don't know what's in the water down in Yazoo City. She's a great lady. Thank you, Christy.
Well, Wesley, it's been wonderful to talk to you about all these memories, and I may just ask you here to sort of sum up if there's any message you'd like to leave to, I know young people listen to these sometimes, and I know you've done some public speaking, and you've had a career that really was a roller coaster. It went, it's like one of those, like the Earnhardt roller coaster at Carowinds. You had a lot of great ups, some downs too, and now you're back kind of where you started in Charlotte. So any parting thoughts before we say goodbye?
Well, I always tell young people that, you can't get anybody to believe in you and your ability unless you believe in yourself. You believe that you are good enough to do it, because one of the worst things you can do is think you're not good enough. And if you think that, you won't be. So I just felt like on all those times that there was someone in my life that helped me understand that believe in yourself, Wesley, work hard, do your best, be the best you can be, and live with the rest. And that was sort of the advice I got. So if I had any advice to young people, they were trying to enter into sports or whatever you're doing, be the best you can be.
That's great. That's Wesley Walls. I'm Scott Fowler. This is Sports Legends of the Carolinas. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again for subscribing and supporting local journalism. Next,
a 5'6" sophomore from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, number 24, Dawn Staley.
I'm Scott Fowler, and this is Sports Legends of the Carolinas.
This show is produced by Jeff Seiner and Cotta Stevens, and the director of audio at McClatchy is Davin Coburn. For lots more content and to continue supporting this kind of work, please visit charlotteobserver.com/sportslegends and consider a digital subscription. Connect with me on Twitter at Scott_Fowler or by email at sfowler@charlotteobserver.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please share with a friend. See you next week.